So it's easy for folks to talk about, well, Lord, you know what? I'm gonna keep it clean. I'm gonna keep it clean. Let me just say this. Senator Bernie Sanders has the courage, the commitment, and the consistency to lead this nation to another level of imagination. He has the courage, conviction, and consistency to take on an entire system that has been rigged for too long against black people, brown people, indigenous people, gay men, and transgender people. He don't play. And he has the courage, conviction, and consistency to know that his only special interests are people like you in this room, because he got the answer to multi-billionaires and billionaires. So I bring to you the one and only, because there is no other like him. And people want to ask you what's the difference, as Brother Killer Mike laid out at our last location when we were at Prestige Barber College, is that there's a difference between people who talk about it and somebody who was chained to black people during the movement. Oh yeah, baby. Senator Sanders has the courage, conviction, and consistency to not only lead this nation, but to bring the world with him. I bring you the senator by way of Brooklyn, who is the senator of the great state of Vermont, the one and the only Senator Bernard Sanders.
Let me thank the Bennett College Choir. Thank you guys. Let me thank Bennett College President Suzanne Walsh for her welcome. And we got a great panel here, and it's going to be followed by another great panel. And at the end of the panels, we want to hear your questions and your comments. So let me just begin by telling you why we are here. The fight for justice, whether it's economic justice or racial justice or social justice or environmental justice, has many, many strong opponents. But the strongest opponent that we have is an establishment that wants us to think small, not big. An establishment that wants to limit our imagination as to what kind of country and world we can be living in. And today, I'm asking you, I'm begging you, that for the future of this country and for the future of this entire planet, because today we face the global crisis of climate change, which is going to require very bold action, bringing the world together. But for the sake of this country and the world, we need you to be actively involved in the political process. We need you to be thinking big, not small. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Iowa, and somebody gave my grandson, who's 8 years old, a little bit of a sign that he brought up on the stage. And the sign was a very profound quote from Nelson Mandela. And it said, "It is always impossible until it happens." You understand what that means? It is always impossible until it happens. In other words, what people will tell you today is raising wages in America so nobody lives in poverty. It's impossible. Can't be done. Health care for everybody is a human right. Too complicated. It just can't be done. Making public colleges, universities, and HBCUs can't be done. Too difficult, too expensive. We only give tax breaks to billionaires. We can't afford to make colleges tuition free. Canceling all student debt. Ending the so-called war on drugs. Reforming a broken and racist criminal justice system. Making sure that women get equal pay for equal work. Ending the demonization of immigrants and passing See, everybody out there, the entire establishment, and that is the trick. Think small, don't think big, it can't happen. You're all powerless. You can't make anything of it. That is what the system wants you to believe. They want you to believe all power rests with the 1%. Well, what we are here today to tell you is that is not the case. We are here to tell you that we will stand up to the lies and the racism and the sexism and the homophobia, the xenophobia of Donald Trump. When we create a movement where we bring people together, no matter what the color of their skin is, or where they were born, or what their religion is, when we do that, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. That is the message. So with that, we begin the panel. And let me start off. Nina, you going to go first? I'm going to ask you the hard question here.
Okay.
All right, let me ask you the question. Let's start off. We're at HBCU here, right? What do HBCUs mean for America, Senator?
Well, thank you, Senator. I mean, historically, we know that the African American community, even before we were set free, understood that reading and writing was equivalent to freedom, that you couldn't separate your ability to be able to read, write, and comprehend from your freedom. And so it should be no surprise that one of the first things that our ancestors did was to seek to create opportunities through institutions like this and all over the country. And that's why historically black colleges and universities meant something then, and they still mean something now.
Senator, I'm a native of Chicago, and I wouldn't be where I am today if I wasn't a graduate of Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida. And so I am a product of an HBCU, right? I'm a product of an institution that took me from the south side of Chicago and molded me and held me and told me that I could be something, saw something in myself that I didn't see into myself. And so when we talk about the importance of HBCUs, it is in the history of those institutions, but it is in what it is doing today for young black people who do not know what their lives could be if it hadn't been for institutions that told you you are something, you're going to be something, and your duty to the world is not just in getting a degree and making money when you graduate. You have a duty to your community and to your people who you left behind. So HBCUs for a long time have been punching above their weight class, right? They make up a small degree of the number of universities, but the doctors are coming from here, the engineers, the teachers. And so these universities must be protected because we are the bedrock of not only black community, but democracy in this country.
Mike?
I'd like to start by saying Morehouse. I was brought up of the house. There was a guy named Dr. Martin Luther King who went there. He was pretty important to this country. And I say that because oftentimes when we talk about historically black colleges and universities, we act like we're just talking about the 15% of Americans who are descendants of slaves. Historically black colleges and universities are good for the greater economy, are good for the greater community. You don't get Thurgood Marshall, you don't get Dr. King, you don't get George Washington Carver, you don't get Booker T. Washington, you don't get your Du Bois, you don't get the memory of Frederick Douglass kept alive if you do not have historically black colleges and universities. The only way that America becomes greater than it has ever been, we're talking about making it great again, the way to make it greater is to make sure that historically black colleges and universities and the product of them, black, white, Indian, and indifferent, are a part of the contributing greater community. We get greater than we've ever been once we embrace that historically black colleges are not just a part of the African American tradition, they are part of the American tradition.
Ben Cohen was introduced as our next Secretary of Ice Cream. But first, right, and our platform is a pint in every freezer. Ben, I know you didn't go to an HBCU. You got some thoughts?
Right. I didn't go to an HBCU. I tried to go to a bunch of those white colleges, and I dropped out of all of them. So I'm glad that we've got HBCUs around because these guys graduated, right?
I dropped out.
Oh, you dropped out too? All right.
All right, don't take students, don't take that as the message of the day. You're supposed to graduate, not drop out. All right, let me throw it out to Mike. An issue that I've been running up against and seeing a little bit more, and that is the impact of the war on drugs in general and the African American community in particular. Thoughts?
The war on drugs, we now know from history, has been a tremendous failure. It was never a war on drugs. It was a war on progressive white kids and black people, ordered by Richard Nixon. From marijuana laws in 1937 that were put in place under the guise of marijuana makes black men ravenous rapists of white women, from it got people in jazz clubs that were not supposed to be together. We know that race and poverty have been used through the war on drugs to continue to separate people and to use slave labor, because essentially slavery is illegal unless you're a prisoner. And we know that we have both public and private prison systems by delivering young people, black and other people of color, and poor white people because of the war on drugs. And what we now know is we get a do-over. And the do-over says that we now know from the crack era that the opium epidemic that's coming down is a health crisis. So we don't have to throw thousands of people with addictions in jail. But we have a greater opportunity. And the greater opportunity is this. Marijuana is going to be legal in our lifetime. Beyond getting a little stoned in the morning, which I didn't do this morning because I knew I had to come see you guys. Marijuana provides through hemp paper, alternative to plastics, and it provides jobs, employment, and resources, dispensaries. And what I would like to see, and I know what Senator Sanders can do, is not only take marijuana off the Schedule 1 list, I know that not only can we expunge the records of prisoners who are getting out, we can create, based on history, because after we deprohibit lot of times, that few corn whiskey, a lot of y'all know what corn liquor is, right? We have an opportunity this time to take the people that are exiting jail have expunged records and creating a pathway as wide as this aisle directly into legal marijuana and creating an economic sustainability. So, as for me and my stoner friends, we'll be buying Ben and Jerry's and voting for Bernard Sanders.
Anything to add to that?
I just want to say that's a real Green New Deal that we need right here. But we're in a church of a place of worship. So listen, the only thing that I want to add, Senator, is that we cannot divorce the war on drugs and the fusion of crack cocaine in our communities from the movements that started from those communities, right? There were movements 40 and 50 years ago in Chicago, right, with black people, white people across race, gender, class, that had built strong infrastructures, right, that had organized communities across all dividers, right? And then we have this crack epidemic. And so what we're talking about now, right, is repairing the wrongs that were done on our communities. And we have a senator who's going to be the president who is saying that we're not only going to repair the wrongs of the war on drugs, but we are going to bring back an era that we are organizing in our communities. We're not just coming and knocking on doors and saying we want your vote every 4 years, but we are building an infrastructure for people to take the agency in their lives. We are suffering as animals now, and we are saying you will be a human being in the way forward. And so that is the magic of what we're talking about.
Ben, this one I know you do have some experience with.
My parents were working class, and they were living in New York City, and they were able to buy a house based on a government program for low-interest mortgages that black people were not eligible for. And that is what created the somewhat of the wealth in my family that enabled them to move into the middle class and for me to get a decent education. In the midst of getting my higher education, one summer I was smoking some pot with some friends on a beach, and the cops caught us. And we were handcuffed, and they took us to the station, and they ended up giving us a ticket for littering a lighted cigarette butt on the ground. But I am well aware that if I was black, I would have ended up with a criminal record that would have prevented me from getting the loans that we needed to start Ben & Jerry's. And so it's really clear to me that if I was black, there wouldn't have been Ben & Jerry's. And I'm conscious of that, I think about that, and that's one of the big reasons why I'm supporting Bernie, because he's going to put an end to that system.
We're going to go on to the next panel in a second, but before I do that, I want to ask you a question which I've been asking around the country. Be honest, give me your answer. How many people here know somebody, or yourselves, have been arrested for possession of marijuana? Raise your hand. Yeah, this is an astounding, this is what the war on drugs has done in this country. It's criminalized so many people in this room. This is amazing. And this is what, we were just earlier today at a barbershop, and we heard stories of people who, for whatever reason, were arrested when they were young, And sometimes when you get arrested when you're young, and you got a criminal record, you don't end up to be, Ben Cohen and start Bennett juries. You end up on the wrong side, and you end up in jail and in and out of jail for your whole entire life because you can't get a job, you can't go to college, you can't get decent housing. The war on drugs has been incredibly destructive for millions and millions of people in this country. And we're going to end that war on drugs, and we're going to make marijuana legal.
Dr. Cornel West.
I am surrounded here by rock stars. Wander a little bit in our discussion, but I did want to stay on, maybe if we could, on one particular subject. And that millions of young people all over this country are leaving school deeply in debt. And I'm talking about a lot of debt. I talked to a guy, it's a true story, I talked to a guy who was in his late 50s, and he said, Bernie, I've been paying off my student debt for decades. I am very afraid they're going to garnish my Social Security. They're going to take away his Social Security check because he hasn't paid off his student debt. All right, let me start off with somebody I have known for, it seems like my whole life, and somebody who has played an extraordinary role in raising political consciousness in America, and is kind of a great writer, what we call just an extraordinary public intellectual. Let me introduce Dr. Cornel West.
Magnificent folk. I tell you, Sister Nina said it. Nina is one of the grand leaders, not just in this movement, in this nation. That's who she is. This brother, he's not just an actor, he is an artistic giant. And this dear brother is an intellectual giant. He has been one of the most consistent writers and professors critical of any form of injustice. Brother Adolph. That's who he is. That's who he is. And I want to begin actually by saluting my dear sister Delrisha White, who graduated 2018. She was a student in my class at Harvard Law School. She won the Intellectual Contribution Prize at Harvard. She represents the grand legacy of this institution. Now, brother, what was the question again? No, we're talking about anything you want. No, I'm going to take this 2 seconds. Keep in mind, anytime you think about student debt, think about what the Wall Street elites got from the Fed, where they got relatively interest-free loans for 3.5 years, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. Given all the crimes on Wall Street, all of the market manipulation and insider trading and fraudulent activity and predatory lending, why don't you treat your precious students in America as good or better than the bankers on Wall Street?
hear me? Yeah, okay. I'm going to deviate a little bit from the question for just a minute or two. I mean, I was just thinking about this when we were listening to the first panel. So, you know, when I was young, a long, long time ago, the voting age was 21, right? In 1964, I was really frustrated, hurt, and angry that I couldn't cast my vote for Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society because I was 17. When I was 21, I didn't vote. I was in an all-night anti-election demonstration in Chapel Hill where I was in school. And I was just thinking about this because, and this might sound shocking. It might not make sense to the younger people at all. But it occurred to me a while ago that from the standpoint of all of the interests that all of us share, right? Labor, environmental, gender justice, civil rights, our interests got more from Richard Nixon than we have gotten from any of the Democrats who have followed. And that's not because he liked us more than they did. I mean, he frankly wished the bulk of us would go away, if not all of us. But we got it because the social movements that advanced our interests through the Nixon presidency were strong enough that he had to do it. Okay. Fast forward. And I'll tell this little anecdote. I'll be brief. I'll try to. It's hard for a professor to do that. But in the spring of 2015, I was telling my friends, look, I don't want to pay attention to the primaries. Just remind me the day before I have to go vote for Hillary Clinton that I need to do it. And then I heard Senator Sanders, whose career I've followed like forever, had announced, or was thinking about announcing. And then I listened to some of it, and I was down at a union convention in Atlantic City and bumped into Larry Cohen, who talked me into getting involved with the Labor Party, and there was nothing to do, and I'm a sort of in for a penny, in for a pound kind of person, so I've been doing that all along since. Why? Because as many of us have said, this is the most important election in any of our lives, even people who older than me. And here's what makes the difference, right? And you can draw this line after the Sanders campaign to include anybody you want to think of. We finally, for the first time in my lifetime, have the opportunity to fight for what we want and really need instead of what we think we can get. And being the kind of person that I am, like I'll have to end on a down note, which is this, that we have been going through this lesser evilism thing now for so much and for so long. And one of the takeaways from the 2016 election that nobody wants to talk about, but you know, I'm a political scientist, so I mean, this is a number that means something to me, that between 6.5 million and 9 million people who voted for Trump had voted for Senator Sanders and for Obama at least once. So what that means is that it's not a simple, straightforward story of white supremacy ruling. It's a fact that the Democrats have not offered working people of any color, age, race, anything for so long. But here's the downside of this moment, right? What makes this election so important, right, is on the one side the possibility that we have to win what we want. And on the other side, the reality that another four years of Trump will be followed by a version of Bolsonaro or Orban, right? Because we're in a moment like in American society now, and you know, I'm a product of the 60s like a couple other people up here. And my parents were products of the New Deal era. And there have been threshold moments like that, but none as serious, none as sharp as this moment. And ironically, this is a moment when the class contradictions in American society are greater than they have ever been in history of the Republic, but nobody wants to talk about them. And in fact, the fact that nobody wants to talk about them is a function of the fact that the contradictions are so sharp. Thank you very much.
Now, everybody knows Danny Glover is a great actor. What some of you may not know is that throughout his entire life, he has stood up for social and racial and economic justice. He's been a fighter.
I'm just enamored with this diverse audience that's here for the purpose of changing the narrative in this country, and I'm happy to be here with you. It's hard to come behind two doctors, Dr. West and Dr. Reed, and say anything that you're not shaking your head to, all right. But since I'm an elder here, and I say that with all responsibility, all the responsibilities of an elder, I had the opportunity to go to college at San Francisco State College in 1965, 66. I had the opportunity to leave campus with no debt. After I finished, there was no debt at all. I had the opportunity to work in public service in the city for the city and county of San Francisco in the Office of Community Development and the Model Cities Program. Those were all cultures that were evolved at the moment in our time that I was in school, that were nurtured here in Greensboro, in Jackson, Mississippi, at Tougaloo, at Jackson State. Those are the moments that informed me in my life. It were the moments that allowed us to have the courage to go on strike in 1968 and form the first School of Ethnic Studies, and still the only School of Ethnic Studies in this country right now at San Francisco State University, and celebrating its 50th year. So I'm a product, as I am right now in this particular moment as well. And this particular moment, as Dr. Reed said, is the most important electoral moment that I've been involved in, from whether it was Mondale or whether it was others who posed. I'm standing with someone I believe in, someone whose voice is about truth, someone who's trying to find how do we fix this and how do we transform this country. This is all it's about here. And I'm standing here as all of you are here for this moment. I think that we have to organize, we have to build. Because not only do we do the work now, as do we get him elected, we have to hold his feet to the fire when we get him in the White House. This is here with you. We the people right here. We the people right here have the possibility and the responsibility to change the narrative of this country, to change the narrative of the country, and whatever we're talking about, whether we're talking about climate change and global warming, which is real, whether we're talking about, free college tuition, which is real, whether we're talking about the prison industrial complex and mass incarceration, which is real, whether we're talking about rebuilding our infrastructure in this country, it's all real and it lies within our hand. Imagine that. You imagine that, third time agenda, it lies within our hand. We can grasp it, we can imagine it, and we can imagine it, and we can dream it, we can make it real.
Ice cream, they're going to join us. So Dr. West, can you slide down a little bit? Agnew, Killer Mike, Ben Cohen, Senator, you slide down a little too so we can make some room. All right, and we're going to put some chairs in here. Killer Mike, you can come, or, yeah. He gonna come around. Okay. All right. Right here. We need another chair. Wait, scoot down a little bit. There we go. No. Okay. There we go. We did it.
How many professors does it take to arrange your own jacket?
Senator, this is the time where we bring all our other sisters and brothers into the discussion. So.
Okay, I think we got a, what's it, so we got a microphone here, and we got one there. All right, so if people want to ask questions or make comments, come on up. We're not going to probably be able to answer every question and comment, but just line up, mic here.
We should